Okay, so U.S. foreign policy, I think, just shifted, and we're focused on all the wrong stuff. We're focused on things like the name change to the Department of War, as if that makes any difference. It's actually the opposite of what you think it is. Okay, I'll try to explain what's going on here in just a moment. So let's start with this. This was from yesterday. Putin said he does not rule out a meeting with Ukrainian president. According to him, if Volodymyr Zelensky is ready, he can come to Moscow. Of course, that's a fool's errand. Nobody's going to do that. Putin knows he's not going to do that. And then you saw people like, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, Arestovich, who was in Zelensky's inner circle, now is out of Zelensky's inner circle, was the guy behind the timepiece that hit job on Zelensky some time ago. Okay. Putin's invite to Zelensky to Moscow with 100% security guarantees. Do you believe 100% security guarantees? I don't. Is a challenge. Not to go is to look weak. To go is to have a unique chance. Not to go is not to look weak. Not to go is not to look foolish. That's what that is. 34 years of mutual mistakes and insults. Time to face the roots of conflict, but this chance will be missed. Putin dares a historic step. Ukrainian politicians can't, and they only think in terms of elections. Okay. I don't buy this at all, that not to go is to look weak. This is stupid, the idea that his security would be guaranteed in Moscow. Now, Zelensky, for his turn, did this. Zelensky says he won't go to Moscow for talks, invites Putin to meet in Kyiv. I just thought that was great. Putin, can come to Kyiv. I cannot go to Moscow while my country is under daily missile attacks. I cannot go to the capital of this T. You know what I'm saying when I say T, right? That's what he is. Zelensky said in this interview, right? He's not going to Moscow. So, I mean, the whole thing is, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like Sam and Diane. And I don't mean to, I was hesitant about this. I don't know if you remember the reference here from the TV show Cheers. Will they or won't they get together? And I know I'm not trying to minimize and say that these two are trying to get together in a romantic sense, but it just seems like, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? There's a lot of drama behind it. So Zelensky met with Fico yesterday, and then I saw this. Putin expressed interest in meeting Zelensky somewhere else except Moscow now. Okay, well, maybe there's a new idea. So what's the new idea? Well, the Russian president, he has to get a different message now, because he said that yes, I'll meet. And then he said, no, I can't meet until conditions. Then he said Moscow. Well, now Russian President Vladimir Putin rejected the legitimacy of Ukrainian President Zelensky and said that it's impossible to conclude a peace agreement with the current Ukrainian government, effectively eliminating the possibility of serious negotiations. This is an old song that he dusted off and trotted back out, but okay. Meanwhile, what's Trump doing? Trump, just like he elevated Putin's status, is elevating Lukashenko from Belarus, his status as well. President Trump, who surprised many by speaking to Belarus ruler Alexander Lukashenko by phone last month, said that he believes that the Eastern European nation will be releasing many of the hundreds of political prisoners it's holding. Now, he's increasing or raising Lukashenko's status, but by releasing political prisoners, Trump thinks that he's making himself look like, see what a great deal maker, peacemaker I am. And it's not. It's just you're kind of being manipulated, it looks like. Meanwhile, his Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, said to India, stop buying Russian oil, right? And stop being part of the BRICS, right? They're the vowel between Russia and China. B, Brazil, R, Russia, I, India, C, China, and S for South Africa. If that's who you want to be, go be it. But either support the dollar or support the United States of America, support your biggest client, who is the American customer, or I guess you're going to pay 50% tariff. And let's see how long this lasts. Now, what I want to show you is the let's see how long this lasts part, I think, is the key, because they're all about the tariffs, increasing the money to the Treasury, but I think they thought that they were going to peel India off by doing that, and it hasn't happened, at least not so far. So here's Trump talking about how Modi is such a great guy now. At the White House, U.S. President Donald Trump made the following significant statements on the India-U.S. relationship. I will always be friends with Modi. He's a great prime minister. Huh? Wait, you just added 50% tariffs because of the trade with Russia, and And Modi, for his part, replied, deeply appreciate and fully reciprocate President Trump's sentiments and positive assessment of our ties. India and the U.S. have very positive and forward-looking, comprehensive, and global strategic partnership. Okay, but he's still paying 50% tariffs, and he's still far closer to Russia than he's ever been, right? Well, maybe not ever been, but at least in recent years than India has ever been. Okay, so Trump is also saying stuff like this to a Polish reporter: find a new job. So that was Trump's retort to a Polish reporter about his Ukraine war query. Polish journalists questioned U.S. President why no concrete actions had been taken to end the Ukraine war, despite repeated promises, prompting Trump to suggest that he find a new job. Okay. Well, Trump was also asked about other things. What guarantees aspect for Ukraine, sir? Well, we'll work that out.
Security guarantees aspect of that with Ukraine, sir.
Well, we'll work that out. We'll help them. Look, we want to save a lot of lives, so we'll do something with that. I think people expect that. We'll help them. Europe will be first in by far, and they want to be first, and they want to see it end. Europe wants to see it end, and it'll end. It'll end all of a sudden. It's going to come together. You watch.
I don't know that he has a plan. I can't say that he doesn't, but it doesn't seem like he does from where I sit. Trump says that the U.S. will host the G20 summit in 2026. Quote, I would very much like Xi and Putin to attend next year's G20. Okay. They would be observers, though I'm not sure that they would want that. Okay. Well, all right. Trump also plans to revise the 1987 missile treaty to enable exports of heavy combat drones. According to Reuters, the U.S. president intends to unilaterally reinterpret missile technology control regime of 1987. This agreement currently treats heavy drones like the MQ-9 Reaper as missiles, banning their free sale abroad. Trump wants to reclassify them as aircraft and open the market. Buyers are already lining up, including Eastern European countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. If the plan goes ahead, Washington could earn billions from exports, while Russia and China would face new challenges in key regions. Okay, I mean, they would have that tech, but that could be a good thing. Now, this is what was interesting that happened yesterday. Hegseth renames the War Department. And I talked about how it was about to happen just it was before I did the video. Okay, the War Department is going to fight decisively, not in endless conflicts. Let's hear what Hegseth has to say.
And that's not to disparage our warfighters, whether it's the Korean War, or the Vietnam War, or our generation of Iraq and Afghanistan. That's to recognize that this name change is not just about renaming. It's about restoring. Words matter. It's restoring, as you've guided us to, Mr. President, restoring the warrior ethos, restoring victory and clarity as an end state, restoring intentionality to the use of force. So, at your direction, Mr. President, the War Department is going to fight decisively, not endless conflicts.
Did you hear that? Not endless conflicts? Okay, my spidey senses went up when I heard that, but listen.
Going to fight to win, not to lose. We're going to go on offense, not just on defense. Maximum lethality, not tepid legality. Violent effect, not politically correct. We're going to raise up warriors, not just defenders. So this War Department.
Jesse Jackson would love his rhyming ability here. I mean, he's done quite a job with his rhymes, but I'm not sure that anything materially will really change because of any renaming of the War Department, the Department of Defense to War Department. They're people are complaining, well, this is going to make them more bellicose. Actually, it's simultaneously with something that does exactly the opposite, and it's far worse than what you see. So they're taking Department of Defense off the walls, and they're putting on they're going to put up Department of War eventually here, but they're scraping defense off the walls. Okay, now the Department of Defense was the War Office. That's what it started out as, or the War Department or whatever, and then the name was changed by Congress later on. So it's now officially on the website as the Department of War. You can see that right on the website. Preston's, this is the DOW. So now DOD, when people say DOD for Department of Defense, I guess it's now the DOW. or Dow, but Dow would be confusing because that could be confused with the markets. Anyway, Preston Stewart, A+. Good work, Preston. I thought this was something Congress had to decide, but it seems to me like the change is in effect across the board. Well, the change happened based on an executive order, but as far as I understand, it requires an act of Congress. Now you have a Republican House and a Republican Congress. You can push that through in a heartbeat, but yeah, it should take an act of Congress. And here it is in the official site, the Department of War. You see it here. So that was quick. Then Donald Trump tweets out this because apparently he has, this is what he's doing. I love the smell of deportations in the morning. This is going back to the line from Apocalypse Now. I love the cavalry officer saying, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning," if you recall the film. Chicago is about to find out why it's called the Department of War. Okay, but you're not supposed to be warring against your own state. There's supposed to be kind of a harder barrier between using soldiers for this, and like you can add more police and add more to your ICE police. Like ICE is the immigration police. You can add more to that. That's fine. But that he's saying, find out why Chicago is an American city. Find out why it's called the Department of War. That seems troubling. But of course, he's doing this for effect. He knows he's doing this for effect. He likes to provoke in that way. Okay, meanwhile, I saw this, and I have mixed emotions about this. It depends on the case. So William Browder, who I think highly of, I've read his book, Red Notice. I think I read 2 of his books. ICE is sending Russian dissidents back to Russia. Okay, back to Russia is not the issue. It's what kind of dissident is being sent back. If you're just trying to escape and not trying I just want to mind my business, that's different. But if you are actually being persecuted in Russia and that's how you escaped and got to the US and you're, happy to be here, freedom, how can I, serve my new country in the United States? That's a different thing. According to the Times, when the dissidents arrive in Russia, the Russian authorities were given documents relating to their asylum applications. Like, what did they say in their asylum applications to the U.S.? That's deeply troubling. So, okay. Now, this is why you don't do this kind of thing where you just ignore the border as we did. This is December 19th of 2023, as we did for the last 4 years before Trump. And we really did ignore we didn't deal with the border like we should have. Let's just be honest. Because if you don't do this, then dealing with the individual cases of actual people who are, seeking legitimate asylum, that's a much easier task if you're not just flinging the borders open. And by the way, I'm all for immigration myself. I'm the kind of, but I just want you to come through the front door. Let's see how we can plug you in, learn what America is, become an American, get to work and increase our taxes, our tax base, right? Great stuff. I think that's good. So I'm not in that same place. Trump's also tweeting out stuff like this. This is Mount Rushmore, if you're not familiar with it, with former U.S. presidents from Washington and other famous U.S. presidents, Lincoln, Jefferson, and Roosevelt. And then the White House posted this. POTUS, President of the United States, is signing executive orders at the fastest pace in decades. No president has signed 200 executive orders this quickly since President Franklin Roosevelt. He's signing this he's putting this out like it's a good thing. It hurts my head. Republicans have always been the ones complaining about. We've been the ones complaining about why are you using executive orders? Pass a law by Congress to do the thing. And you have a Republican House and a Republican Senate. You can certainly pass these things. Executive orders, by the way, won't stand when the next Democrat comes in and just wipes them out, because he can wipe out an executive order with an executive order. So it's kind of a silly thing. All right, just a few follow-up stories. Remember Ursula von der Leyen and von der Leyen. Okay. And the plane that was, they messed with the GPS. Well, Lithuania said after conflicting reports from authorities over GPS disruptions on Ursula von der Leyen's plane that Russia's signal interference is a real and growing threat. More than 1,000 aircraft and 33 ships faced disruptions in August alone, with some ships refusing to enter Klaipėda port over the safety concerns. That's in the Baltic Sea, Klaipėda. Beautiful city. Okay. Elbridge Colby. Now I'm reading Elbridge Colby's book about China and how our defense strategy has shifted. So I'm telling you that in the background. I've resisted it because I didn't want to pay for it because I didn't want to put money in his pocket. I was trying to find it in the library and I just couldn't. So I finally just got over it and bought the book. Okay. So the statement here is that the U.S. Department of Defense informed European countries last week that military support under a program known as Section 333 will be cut to zero from the next fiscal year, a Lithuanian Defense Ministry official said on Friday. That's according to Reuters. Okay, that's true. But it's not like, let me just ignore Ukraine. This is part of the overall defense strategy that has been, which is focused on China. I mean, this is the point of Elbridge Colby. I want to say Elbridge Gerry every time. Elbridge Gerry was one of the founding fathers, and that's what my tongue wants to say. Elbridge Colby's book, Strategy of Denial, is saying that's what the Defense Department's strategy has been. So Pentagon's Elbridge Colby begins to push cuts for U.S. military aid to Eastern European and Baltic countries that border Russia in a move that has raised eyebrows among national security officials in a chilling message to Europe and Ukraine, sources tell Fox News. Jennifer Griffin is a Fox News correspondent that deals with all things defense. Okay. I don't think there's a lot to worry about here in the sense that it's nothing new. This is the posture of the United States, and it has been the posture of the United States for the last year. So it's just that it's finally catching up. But this is more troubling. So Pentagon proposes refocusing defense strategy. Remember, it's now no longer the Department of Defense. It's the Department of War. And those warmongers. Well, you'll stop cursing them for being warmongers in a moment. Refocusing the defense strategy on protecting U.S. territory, not deterring China or Russia. Wait, what just happened? Protecting U.S. territory, not deterring China or Russia. What U.S. territory needs to be protected? Okay, so the author of the draft strategy is Undersecretary of War for Policy, Elbridge Colby. Yeah, here it is in Politico. Pentagon plan prioritizes homeland over China threat. Pentagon officials are proposing the department prioritize protecting the homeland and Western Hemisphere, a striking reversal from the military years-long mandate to focus on the threat from China, which is why I'm showing you in the thumbnail here, we have this multipolar world that China and Russia desperately want, where China's over its sphere and Russia's over its sphere into Eastern Europe, and the EU is over its sphere, and maybe Brazil down here, and the US over its sphere, and we just all stay in our spheres. Well, that's going to last really long. How long do you think they'll actually stay in their spheres? Okay, a draft of the newest defense strategy, which landed on Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's desk last week, placed domestic and regional missions above countering adversaries such as Beijing and Moscow. Hear that again. It's on Pete Hegseth's desk. It places domestic and regional missions above countering adversaries in Beijing and Moscow. Okay, that's a huge shift. I can't explain how big of a shift this is. If you're not watching this particular video, you're missing the biggest story in a month, easily, maybe longer. The move, I don't say that lightly because I know what I've covered. The move would mark a major shift from recent Democrat and Republican administrations, including President Donald Trump's first term in office, when he referred to Beijing as America's greatest rival. This is going to be a major shift for the U.S. and its allies on multiple continents, said one of the people briefed on the draft document. The old, trusted U.S. promises are being questioned. Yeah, this is bad. This is really bad. Okay, just a few follow-up stories on things. Preston Stewart. Now, this falls within it because Venezuela would fall into this regional kind of thing. Preston Stewart, again, personal opinion, there's an 80% chance that we see an increase in military strikes in or near Venezuela in coming days. Lots of, and the reason I'm showing you this is I talked about Venezuela the other day. I'm not talking about it excessively or anything, but he said lots of little pieces are lining up. Yeah, that's exactly what I felt when I was seeing what was about to happen from Israel to Iran. Lots of little pieces are lining up. Language from the administration is changing, and a strike from last week seems to have been politically positive. Like they got good feedback about what they did last week, so they may be going in for more. Meanwhile, Kremlin spokesperson Peskov admitted that all messaging apps are fully transparent and to Russian security services, saying that law enforcement can access private correspondence whenever deemed necessary. So if you have a phone in Russia, don't think that it's secure. With any private messaging app. This was just weird. Mike Johnson just claimed that Trump was an FBI informant to help take down Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the story here is not that Trump was an FBI informant. The story here is that Mike Johnson just claimed, so the Speaker of the House just said that this was true. Whether he was or wasn't, I don't know. We'll see if he can produce evidence or if there is any evidence or whatever. Okay. But that's what the Speaker of the House just claimed about the President of the United States. I don't know what the story is, but we'll find out over time what's happening. Okay, Jay Bowes from RT fame is saying Germany is militarizing again, using a faux threat of Russian aggression. This is not a faux threat. Russian aggression is a real thing. It is not a faux threat to cast off its post-genocidal guilt and bury its Nazi past. How quickly Western democracies have forgotten where the greatest threats to humanity emanated from. Yeah, we have. It's Russia. This is the greatest threat to humanity right now on the planet. Perhaps China, depending on what they're planning to do with Taiwan or how aggressive they might be. But yeah, that's some propaganda right there. Wow. Okay. Don't want you to forget that it's day 280 of the country of Georgia protests. Those people deserve a lot of credit for still coming out and protesting and continuing to do this day over day over day over day, 280 days. Last, I'll leave you with Darth Putin. Well, any Western soldiers in Ukraine would be legitimate targets. Remember, they were talking about potentially having boots on the ground in Ukraine to preserve the peace. Well, any Western soldiers in Ukraine would be legitimate targets. They'll be safe from Russia if they stay away from hospitals, kindergartens, and apartment blocks. This guy's got away with words, doesn't he? All right, my friends, that's all that I have. Tell me what you thought about what you heard. I think what's actually happening is that if this doctrine goes through, we're moving into that multipolar world, and that is a much more dangerous place. Hopefully, this will be thwarted. Hopefully, cooler heads will prevail. But wow, it's bad. It's like percentage-wise going up, pushing us toward the next conflict because you let bad guys get aggressive. All right. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.